It's too hot to sit around wondering like, how does this, do my thighs look okay to someone else? I'm going to suffocate if I think that. And it just like as
Exactly.
soon as you start to step out of that thinking, it immediately appears ludicrous. And then it makes you turn around and be like, okay, who is protected by this?
Yes. I'm Autumn Brown.
And I'm Adrienne Marie Brown.
And this is How to Survive the End of the World,
our podcast about learning from apocalypse with grace, rigor, and curiosity. Octavia Butler's work is a place where the body is reimagined over and over. And science fiction as a genre is constantly asking us to consider which bodies can survive, which bodies do we value. Octavia wrote so much about this, and one of the things that she wrote are the Earthseed verses, which are part of the parable of the sower and the parable of the talents. And they're verses of a belief system that the protagonist feels into. And I just want to share a quote right now. We are Earthseed. We are flesh, self-aware, questing, problem-solving flesh. We are that aspect of Earthlife best able to shape God knowingly. We are Earthlife maturing, Earthlife preparing to fall away from the parent world. We are Earthlife preparing to take root in new ground, Earthlife fulfilling its purpose, its promise, its destiny.
In this verse, Octavia Butler and her protagonist are asserting a directness in the connection between the human body and the planet Earth, the human body in relationship with the planet. But intersecting with the beauty and grandiosity of this vision is our lived reality that our bodies right now at this moment are both colonizers on this planet, and our bodies are also colonized spaces on this planet. In this episode, we get into talking about why getting in a right relationship with our bodies is key to getting in right relationship with the planet. I was just thinking about this like a few weeks ago about like what was my first experience of witnessing someone else expressing disgust at my body. And that like, you and I are both people who think a lot about like fatness and fat phobia. I don't think either of us have done like a lot of writing about it. I've done a little bit of writing about it. I think you've probably done more writing on your blog about it than I have on mine. But like, and there are people out there who've done tons of writing about fat phobia and fatness. And so at some point, I feel like it'd be great for us to like directly reference some of the amazing work that's out there, like Roxane Gay's book that just came out on hunger. But like,
oh my God. Can we pause there for a minute and just say like,
yes,
that book is incredible.
Yeah. And actually, because I know you're reading it right now, I want to ask you a couple of questions about it. But before that, I just wanted to share this memory that I had because I'm realizing that I had this experience a few years ago, right after having Finn, who is my oldest child. And that really was like it was a very intense experience to have. And I think and for me, it was an intense experience in that like I spent up until having a child, I spent most of my like early adult life having like what I think most people would consider like a kind of like culturally approved, like really nice body, like skinny waist and skinny calves, but then like a pretty luscious butt and like, you know what I mean? Whatever. And then as most people's bodies do, my body changed a lot after I gave birth. And I ended up gaining a lot of weight after giving birth, and through the process of nursing and getting lots of really negative feedback from people that there was something wrong with the way my body looked. I mean, like, and a lot of it being like through casual conversations where people would say, I have memories of people saying things to me like, oh, I know you still have a lot of weight to lose from the baby stuff, but I think you look really sexy right now too. Like older women in my life saying things like that to me, where it's just like, wow, like I can't believe you're couching it in that way. But I have this distinct memory of going to We were on a trip to Greece, actually. Sam is my partner, and I and Finn, who is 10 months old, and we were traveling with Sam's family. And we were like getting on public transit. And it was the strangest experience, because basically what happened was we were standing on the platform, waiting for a train, and I happened to look up at these two younger people who were standing right behind us, and I happened to look at them right at the moment where I like caught them in the act of like the woman. It was a woman and a man, and the woman was basically like using her eyes and hands to gesture at my body to ask him if he thought it was hot. And he made this total disgusted face. Like, no, absolutely not. And then like they both looked at me and saw me staring at them. And I just like, I literally just like shot daggers from my eyes. I was like, whatever like hatred I can send you right now, like I'm sending you all of the worst energy I can send you. And they really received it. Like they could see that I caught them in the act of like acting like they were grossed out at my body. And it was interesting for me because it really like, you know, especially now that I have some distance from that experience, it really reified for me that like, you know, that there's such a huge problem in our language around access and oppression that we continue to use the word phobia for things, where it's like, it's not a fear. You know what I mean? It's like what they were expressing towards my body was not a fear of my body. They were expressing hatred and disgust towards my body. And like, that's a whole different, there's something completely different happening there. And for me, it's like similar with like Islamophobia. It's like, no, it's not a fear of Islam. What we're talking about with Islamophobia is not a fear of Islam. It's a hatred and disgust of something that you perceive as being so other than yourself. And it's not to say that fear doesn't play a role in people's hatred and disgust, but like boiling it down as though fear is the thing that's at the base of it instead of this other thing that's actually much more, I think, insidious and harder to root out. That has been like a real sticking point for me whenever I hear conversations about fat phobia, where I'm like, we're not even talking about this in the way we need to be talking about it to some extent.
Exactly.
Do you know what I'm saying?
I totally, deeply, deeply agree with that. I feel like, you know, it's one of the things like since I was younger that I remember the first time being like, oh, fat phobia. And I'm just like, yeah, there's a level at which I think people are scared of other people's fatness and scared of the idea that they could also get fat, that like fat is something that could like reach across the aisle and grab them up.
Right.
And constantly like, you know, gobble them up. Like it really is like shaping it as like, it's a monster. And so I totally agree with that questioning of it, because I do think it makes it like the person who's experiencing it is kind of like innocent in that. It's like, oh, I didn't mean to bully them. I was just so scared, you know, and it's just like, like that's not how it actually feels as it's playing out anyway, in my experience. And it's fatness has been one of these things that, like, again, recently, even to this morning, I was looking in the mirror as I often do these days and just being like, damn, I look really good to me. And like having this experience of so many things that I was taught were ugly or disgusting or bad or undesirable about my own body or my race or my, which is my body, but, you know, just like all these things that I was taught were like, this is gross about you. And as I get older, I'm like, oh no, this is like one of the best things about me. And, you know, particularly like my body, where I'm like, I've gotten this feedback from lovers for years, which is like, you should live naked. Like I've heard that from like all these people. And it's so counter to everything that I grew up hearing about my body, which was like, it's shameful. It needs to be covered. It's disgusting. No one's ever going to want that. You're going to be lucky if anyone does want that. You know, if someone does, then you should bend over backwards to make sure you can keep that person, you know, like, I mean, it's just set up like, you know, system after system of unwell behaviors and unwell thinking in myself. So then it's been like such a godsend to be kind of recovering access to my body and recovering like access to my own real experience of my body. So I feel like it started a couple years ago on my sabbatical where for part of it was at this like clothing optional place in Hawaii
Oh
that
yeah, I remember that.
remember it was like, and people, it really was optional. Some people would wear some suits or whatever. And I found myself like as often as possible just being like, is it time to take all this off again? Hey, like I was just like, I'm loving this experience. And loving like just being in relationship with people of a lot of different kinds of bodies, all of which were still smaller than mine. And having this like feeling of my own confidence in what I was bringing. And now I've been experiencing that a lot. So like I'll be in like a changing room at a gym or a spa or something and notice that like all the smaller people around me are like doing contortions to make sure that everything stays covered the entire time.
Yes.
While I'm over here like just throwing everything off and just feeling like, look at this glorious, miraculous body that I have and contend with it and feel whatever you're going to feel about it. But I'm comfortable in it and there's nothing to hide. And starting to have an internal dialogue like that comes more and more naturally.
Yes. I mean, I think it's like, when I've stepped back from some of the language that I hear and like some of the things that you were just sharing about like messages that you heard as a child and as a young adult, like, and I mean, it's one of those things where like when you step back from it, you can so clearly see how much it really truly is the language of an oppressor. Like it's the language and it's the language of an abuser, right? Like the idea that you have to make yourself a certain way in order to deserve love. And if you can't maintain that certain way of being, then you literally do not deserve love and you don't deserve to be looked at. And, a huge function of, a huge way that fat, quote unquote, fat phobia. I'm just gonna call it fat hatred for the rest of this conversation. But a huge part of the way,
let's call it
fat hatred. But a huge part of the way fat hatred functions in society is by the like averting of the gaze. That like this person, I can't even bring myself to look at this person, and that's reinforcing of the idea that they don't deserve to be in public. And it's just it's one of those things that is so clearly rooted in like in oppression and in the idea that that we have to have ways to enforce that some people get to take up space and other people don't. But then there's this really deep like psychosis to it where everyone's then in that psychology. So like I had a friend visiting a few weeks ago who is like extremely thin and small, but then like has like a really nice ass. And she was expressing jealousy towards the body of another person that we know who's much thinner than her and basically doesn't have an ass, right? And so it was just really intense to be like, oh my God, like you're expressing essentially like a version of fat hatred as someone who like isn't fat in any way. And like, but fat hatred towards yourself and like a desire for this other thing that this other person has. And again, so much of that is also just rooted in like colonial thinking and or a colonizing approach to like policing of bodies, right? That like the thing that we most want to punish is the thing that looks like abundance. And so it's really like, I mean, it's really like really interesting when you like
all the way
write
down.
it all the way down, bitch. But it's just really interesting when you kind of like, for me, it's been interesting as I've continued like peeling back those layers of like, what's actually happening here? Like, oh my God, this is even, and there's a way in which like, I'm like, this is even worse than we think. It's even worse than I thought,
It is. It absolutely is. I mean, if you think about, so my experience, and I would love to hear yours on this, of like traveling outside the U.S., like traveling, the further north the place is, like really seeing like, oh, this system roots into these places too. So like traveling in England, I'm like, oh, I can see there's this concept of what a proper body is and like a proper way of bringing that body into the public that's like not just about size and scale, but like how it's dressed and what lines go where and all this stuff. And then traveling to other spaces, and primarily here I think of like global south spaces that I've been to. So going down to South Africa, going even to like Jamaica and like Mexico, which is like technically north, but it feels like it connects more with the global South ways of being and living. Like the way that people interact with my body in those spaces is so, like, first of all, there's just a lot of not caring, like there's a lot of like, we're not really looking at you, like what you're doing with your body is like not the center of attention in the same way.
Yes.
Or if we are, there might be something very directly spoken. Like I've had people, like I remember being in Jamaica, visiting with a friend and having someone just be like, oh, like basically, do you have babies? Because you've got these stretch marks on your arms. And I was like, nope, no babies, just the stretch marks. And then she just kind of like laughed it off, and it was like fine. And I felt fine with it because it didn't feel like she was trying to control anything. It was just like, I'm really curious about whether you have children.
Right,
basically.
right.
Like it felt like, oh, this is indicative. Like this is data to me versus like this is a judgment, like something I'm going to judge against you. And then in other places being like, something else might be the shocker. Like the fact that I have tattoos might be more shocking than my size or something. But then even in the US, I find that this is like, I remember the first time going to New Orleans when it was hot outside and just being like, oh, they figured this out here. Like everyone is just wearing like butt shorts and nothing else and like teeny tops maybe, and just rolling out and just being like, it's too hot to sit around wondering like, how does this, do my thighs look okay to someone else? I'm going to suffocate if I think that,
Exactly.
And it just like, as soon as you start to step out of that thinking, it immediately appears ludicrous. And then it makes you turn around and be like, okay, who is protected by this?
Yes.
And,
yes.
Like who benefits from it, right? And it's totally like, oh, these food industries, these industries of constant detox, these industries of constant dieting, which are not about getting in right relationship with like the resources of the planet. It's really just like change your body. It doesn't look good to the male gaze.
Exactly. Yeah, I feel like,
and it doesn't. And, it represents abundance, and you're not supposed to have any. So
yes,
no.
Exactly. And I feel like, I feel like this summer for me has been, I've definitely been in like a major like revolution period, like personal revolution in myself around a lot of things over the last year. But this summer has really been amazing for me in terms of just really, just really enjoying my skin and enjoying my lusciousness and enjoying like fully browning up, like being out in the sun as much as I can and getting as brown as I can and like exposing as much skin as I can and just really enjoying that. And really soaking in as much of like the positive feedback and positive energy I get from others about my body.
Well, what's the turning point? Like what do you feel like happened? Because, I remember when you were like, it's such a deep thing for us because I remember when you were like super skinny girl. And I remember the living in the comparisons of that too. That people were like, just had a lot of feelings or thoughts about like why my body looked the way mine did. And yours and April's really looked different from that. And then you were even skinnier than April at a certain point. It was just like, oh, it was like this, it's like, oh, you must have gotten that from your dad, or, there were just comments there.
Right, like constant investigation of why.
Yeah, people are like, what's wrong with Adrienne? Like, she ate everyone else's food, like just whatever was going on. And knowing that, just like reading the Roxane Gay book, the Hunger book, and realizing like, actually, I was not a chubby kid. Like I definitely like gained weight in response to trauma. And it was like, that's also been a part of my like transition into, as I'm healing that trauma, like being like, oh, thank you, body. Like, thank you for the ways that you protected and took care of me and like held me during that. But then, and we can come back to that. But I also remember when you went through your pregnancy and gained weight. And I remember after that, people being like, we would get a lot more of like, y'all look alike.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, for me, I'm enjoying that. Cause I'm just like, you're gorgeous. That's awesome. But really wondering like, how was that for you? And sort of how did you move through to this place that you are now where you're like loving your lusciousness? And
Yeah,
body?
that's a really good question because I think like for me, I went through lots of different iterations with this. Like there was the initial experience of feeling just like betrayed by the fact that like nursing didn't result in weight loss. Like that's a whole thing for people who've given birth to babies.
Yep.
Like, it's this whole thing where like everyone tells you beforehand that like whatever weight you gain during pregnancy you'll lose because of nursing. And that's pure mythology. Like it's just there's very little direct relationship between nursing and weight loss. It's like 50-50. You know what I mean? It's like
your facts need more facts.
Yeah.
Dear.
So it's like, I mean, and the idea that it would be a good, and this is, again, these are like my sort of like iterative moments as I've gone through my own process with this. But like at first there was betrayal. Then there was a sense of like profound confusion. Once I realized that I wasn't losing weight, there was this profound confusion at the idea that it would be a good sign if I was losing weight while feeding someone else from my body. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, wait a minute. Like, there's like no other like mammal that we can think of on the planet for whom we would say, yeah, well, we really want us to see that whale lose like as much weight as possible while it's nursing its baby, and that would be the sign that that whale is returning to perfect health. It's like, that makes zero sense, right? And, of course, and I had like lots of conversations with other moms. A big turning point for me was talking with other mothers who struggled to keep weight on after having babies, and how hard and how like hungry they were at all times, and how miserable they were, and how cold they were all the time, and just like there's like extraordinary health issues that go along with being too thin, as we know, right? So there's this, and of course I've learned a lot about it over time. I've learned that thinness, like being too thin, kills people on an order that being too fat never does and never has. Do you know what I mean? So I think like there's been a lot of reversal for me around just shit that you learn as an adolescent when you're basically being inducted into patriarchy. There's just shit that you learn that's just not grounded in facts at all. And then you get on, you get into your like, for me, a big part of it came from like moving into like, moving out of my maiden body into my matron body or whatever, like my mother body, and then learning all of this stuff on the other side of that, the wisdom that just comes from, like the having gone through that transformation. But to answer your question really directly, in terms of what it meant for me to go from being a skinny person to being a fat person, especially in relationship to having, for me, like it was really profound to do that after having been in relationship with you and April and Mom, my whole, and having witnessed you all in different ways struggling with weight throughout all of my adolescence and early adulthood. And then finally having the other side, having the experience of what it was that you all were experiencing. And for years that I never knew what it felt like to be on the other side of that conversation. It gave me a profound sense of solidarity with you and with April and with Mom, a profound sense of like, fuck all those people, like fuck them for making you feel that way. And I have to say, like, I never felt comfortable with the ways in which I experienced comparison with you and April as a kid either. And that was like racially as well. I know you remember, and I remember too, constantly being given the feedback that I was the prettiest one because I had green eyes and y'all had brown eyes, and because I was skinnier than you. And I knew from a very early age that was complete fuckery. You know what I mean? Like, it was like very clear to me. It was very clear to me.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm the prettiest one. Like, that's just
exactly. Well, it's hilarious too when you're a younger sister and you're like, but she has boobs. It's like this whole thing. But but for me,
right. Well, I mean, that was such a big part of like the comparison of like, starting with the race and the eyes and the stuff like that, and then moving to the body and being like, oh, I think there's also this control stuff that comes in, right? It's just like, oh, I can't, Like, this is not just a function of control, which is one of the reasons why I think the Hunger book is so good, because there's so many ways in which it's like, oh, she writes everything in this very accessible and almost simple way, but it's these very complex emotional territory that she's covering. And part of it is that, like, oh, everyone thinks that you have control over it and you're making a decision. Like, I could, if I just did this, I would be fine, but instead I'm doing this. And like, not understanding that it's like, no, like, I might be healthy. I might have an eating disorder. You actually can't tell that from looking at me.
Right.
Like, I might have an eating disorder. I might have a thyroid disorder, or I might actually just, like, this is my size. And that's been part of what I've been wrestling with, is like, how do you know which is which, and why do people feel like they have so much ground to assess you as non-doctors and try to tell you, like, oh, here's what I have decided is going on.
Well, and
so I'm like, if you
especially-
see me and you never see me exercise and you see me only eat Skittles, then, like, yeah, we can totally have a conversation about my health. It's not just about my weight. But I know the part of what's blown my mind is, like, in this past few years where I tore my meniscus and I've got early onset arthritis, is even when the doctors told me, they were like, this is very weight related. And then I've met all these other skinny people who have the same things. And I'm like, so if this is weight related, then how come all these skinny people also have torn meniscus and like early onset arthritis and all these other, heart problems and heart attacks and all this stuff? And I'm just like, I think that the fat hatred that we're talking about, I really think that it skews how people even approach, like, scientific explorations and, like, gathering data about what's happening in the body. Because I think people are like, we hate fat. Fat is to blame for this, whether it actually is to blame for it or not. And then it makes it very difficult as a person of size to get accurate information about anything related to your health.
Exactly. And I mean, it's very well documented at this point that because of the fact that so much of the medical field will ascribe health issues to fatness that aren't actually directly related in any evidentiary way to fatness, they're actually...
You better say evidentiary.
I said evidentiary. They actually prevent access to care for fat people, right? And then that increases the health issues that they have because they can't get access to the care that they need. I think that's one of the things that's been really, I think another part of the turning point for me is actually doing a review myself of the evidence and being like, oh, like half the shit that people repeat to you when they think as skinny people they can tell you about yourself as a fat person is just not grounded in anything that's scientific.
Well, so this gets into, like, one of my shady petty things, which is like,
is people not being scientists.
I'm like, you're not science. You don't know any science. But actually, one of the things that happens in my brain is I do little comparative studies. Like, after someone gives me health advice, like, I do start to notice, like, so many of those people eat like crap. Like, I drink, like, I'm just like, you don't eat well. Like, you eat non-organic, like, GMO filled crap that you get from somewhere, super highly processed food that you don't know the source of it and you don't know the name of it. You don't eat a bunch of, like, fresh vegetables and stuff like that. I'm over here doing all of that. Like, I travel a lot, but even as I travel, like, I know what my options are for, like, where in the airport can I go get something that's not going to be a disaster inside my body. And, I avoid most dairy and most meat when I'm on the road. And, like, really, I mean, I just, like, put a lot of time and effort into the quality of food that I'm getting. And that's been something I've been increasing over the past 5 years. And I love having those little, it's purely internal, right? Like, I don't point it out like, oh, look at you eating like that again. But I do have that petty moment
You're not, like,
inside of
externally
myself
shady.
where I'm just sort of like, wow, I'm being so good to my body. And that includes, like, loving it in spite of the onslaught of unsolicited advice that is constantly coming towards it. And making my own choices inside of that. But then I also love the moment when I go to the doctor and I can see that they have, like, whatever assumptions, and then going through all the tests, and they always come back and they're like, wow, your heart's in great shape. Your liver's in great shape. You're in great shape. You just need to, stay active and be more active. Because, I've been also wearing a Fitbit, to sort of suss out, like, am I a
Like
sloth?
tracking your activity.
Basically, like, what's wrong with me? And it's like, yeah, on the days that I'm home, which are not very many, as you know, on the days that I'm home, I'm a couch potato. I will like lay on the couch with TV going nonstop and just do my work right there. But that's like 4 days out of a month. And then the rest of the time, like when I'm facilitating, I'm on my feet a huge portion of a day. And then the other days I'm traveling, which means like walking miles through airports and like carrying this massive bag around and lifting it. So like when I actually get comparative with people, like I can usually lift more than they can. I can usually walk longer or further, you know. I might not be the strongest person, but I'm like pretty strong. And the
Yeah.
things that go wrong are more like, you know, I have a bad tendency of like, if something does go wrong, I don't love going to the doctor to get it sorted. And so sometimes I wait too long to actually get the help I need, in part because, you know, medical profession can be so traumatizing for people who they look at and they make assumptions around. And
Oh my God. Oh my God. I literally just had, I think I probably told you this story, but I'll tell it again because now we're recording.
we'll tell the people.
I tell the people the story. I had exactly one of those experiences that is exactly the kind of thing that makes you not want to go to the doctor, right?
Yeah.
Like where, as you know, at the beginning of March, I had a surgery.
Yeah.
And it was like a laparoscopic abdominal surgery, like went right through my little belly button. And about 2 weeks after the surgery, my incision started hurting. And so I went back to get it checked, but I wasn't able to see my regular doctor because I needed to get it checked that day. And my regular gynecologist, Dr. OBGYN person, she's incredible. She's like amazing, right?
Mine too.
Oh, and I should say for the purposes of this show that because I think it's really helpful contextualizing of how terrible this experience was, that the surgery I had was a sterilization surgery, right? Like I had made the decision that I didn't want to have any more babies biologically. And I went and I got my tubes tied or cauterized or whatever we say now. And so I'm 2 weeks out from a
Fixed you like a dog.
Fix me. I'm 2 weeks out for a sterilization surgery, mind you. And this is something that like my regular doctor would know, that this sterilization surgery is coming like 2.5 years after losing my fourth baby and after me having had 3 living children, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of a big deal is what I'm saying. So I go in the door and I go to get this incision checked, and I'm just there to get my incision checked. And the doctor that comes in, who's just been assigned to check my incision, she walks in the door and is followed in by 3 students. And she doesn't ask me before they walk in whether I'm okay with them being in the room. She asks me as they walk in the door if I'm okay with it.
Oh, hell no.
And then proceeds to turn my whole appointment into an opportunity to teach these students like how to interact with the patient and how to work through a chart. So after they check my incision to ensure that it's fine, and it turns out it's fine, and that the appointment should have been over at that point, instead they go on to start working through my chart. They ask me if I'm willing to get vaccinated for something that I'm like out of date with. And then the doctor goes and looks at my BMI and starts interviewing me, like interrogating me about my weight loss plan.
No.
Based on my BMI.
Girl.
And then instead of doing what I should have done in that moment, which is to say, this appointment is over and I'm leaving the room. Like I should have just left the room or like knocked her brains out. What I instead did was performed the perfect patient. Like I just answered all of her questions and I was very friendly. And I especially was in performance mode, I think, because there were students in the room.
Yeah, exactly.
But again, if I had been actually performing the perfect patient, I would have totally just left because that's what a perfect patient would have done, right? Is just like be like, this is not what I came here for, and it's totally inappropriate for you to be asking me these questions, so I'm leaving now. But it was one of those moments for me
so hard
of like,
to do.
It's really hard to walk out the door, and because they have so much control and so much power in that situation. And so it was one of those perfect examples for me of like, how do you know that I'm here because I'm 2 weeks out from a sterilization surgery, and you think that it's appropriate to ask me about my weight loss plan?
Yeah.
I definitely had this moment where I was reflecting on the experience afterwards and thinking about the fat hatred that was happening in that moment. and that
Yeah.
doctor, as a fellow cis woman, and there's something that clicked into place in her mind that said, in spite of how much I, as a fellow cis woman, understand this conversation to be one that induces shame, I'm still going to force you to have that conversation with me, in spite of the fact that I know that you just had a surgery that's designed to ensure that you don't have any more children. And even though I'm looking at your chart and I can see that your fourth baby died, I'm still going to
Yeah.
have that conversation with you.
Well, there's just like this deep, deep level of, you know, a lack of empathy or like an inability to see someone in their wholness. But, I think one of the things
Yes.
that's always been complicated to me is like that when people have broached the topic of my health with me, because I've had people, I've had family, I've had friends, I've had different people broach it in different ways. And the worst is when people are like, look, someone's got to say it to you, right? Like that kind of energy of like, someone's got to make you turn and face it and get real about it. And like that energy, there's just no room usually in there for the fact that it's like, I am totally aware of what's going on. I've tried everything. Every day I'm trying everything because I've been told I need to try everything because I've
I'm
been told
living in
something's
this body
so
every
wrong with me.
day.
Exactly. And that's what, again, I appreciate. I feel like Roxanne's book did such a good job of like putting a finger on that particular thing of like, you think I'm ever not aware of it? Like, I'm in the world all the time and I have to think, I travel all the time. I'm in airplane seats all the time. I have to figure out, is the seatbelt going to fit or all these different things. Like, I'm aware of it all the time. And I'm making choices within it of what I'm going to do. And so the best conversations have been the ones where people really come with some curiosity, because I'm also like, I don't want to dismiss that like having extra weight on your body can be something, right? Or can mean something. Like I don't want to dismiss what is obesity. I don't want to dismiss that there are times when I feel like, oh, I am addicted to sugar and I can't make better choices around it. There are like all of those things happen and are also true. Um, and and it's been so good. Like I've been running this Facebook group because you did that sugar shift, that sugar cleanse. Was it like 4 years ago now or something?
I think it was like 2013 that I did it the first
2013,
time.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
just this idea of like cleansing the body, like clearing the body of sugar and then recalibrating, right? And just the idea that like sugar can be really addictive for people. So I've had this Facebook space and holding that space and seeing all these people of very different sizes who are wrestling with their relationship
Yes.
to sugar has been so helpful in terms of like, okay, how do we have more honest conversations about the fact that like there are foods and drinks and practices that do not induce health, and there are those that really do induce health. And we shouldn't pretend that like someone who is overweight and who is never able to, engage in what would be considered healthier behaviors, like never able to engage in physical activity or always feels like they're out of control with their food. Like there's something there. There's some work, some healing, something needed there, but it may never change that person's size, right? And that's been one of the things for me is like, I've been about the same size, give or take. Like I have like this 30-pound range and I've gained and lost that same range of weight over and over again. And, but I'm basically in this range. And like when I'm on the lower end of it, I feel really great my knees feel really great. Everything feels really great. And then when I'm in the upper range, I feel less great, but still pretty great, and
Right.
like, then but then the problem is, if I injure myself,
Except when
then
you're
it takes
injured.
me
Exactly.
longer to recover. Right. And it's like harder for me to function. And so that's what I've been paying attention to is like, oh, I don't injure myself simply because I'm overweight. I injure myself because I'm really careless and I like try to do too many things at a time, or I try to rush into a physical activity that's way beyond what I'm able to do. And then I injure myself and I'm not able to recover quickly. And the thing that helps me not injure myself has been doing a lot of yoga, right? Like actually
Yeah.
doing stretches and being in a mobile like lifestyle with my body is when I don't injure myself as much. And that happens at all different sizes. And this summer it's been really nice because I've been doing like dance parties here in the house. straight up putting on the Troll soundtrack
Oh,
since
the
I saw
Troll
that movie.
soundtrack is the best.
It's so good for dancing around the house. Like, you're just sort of like, everybody, pick your hair and move your body. I'm like, I will, Troll. So,
Yes.
and just like moving around and being like, I want to move around because my body, you know, I'm feeling mobile. I'm stretching every morning, and then my body naturally wants to move around.
Exactly. Well, and I think that, like, I wanted to loop back to something you had said before about that, like, when people confront you about your health situation as though like someone needs to say something, you know, and it's like, and it's not to say, of course, like it can be very true that people can be very much like in denial about the circumstances surrounding their health. And that is as true of skinny people as it is of fat people. Right. So like, you know, I mean, I remember for years us trying to like intervene on Dad to eat some vegetables. You know, it's just like, that's like, and he has been skinny our whole lives, right? So like, that's that I think that like there is something to be said for like, you know, what does it mean that we have a society that really grounds a lot of our practice around healthy behaviors and the idea of interventions, I think is like something that maybe to return to as a question. Like, why do we so often feel like we have to intervene on each other? And I would say that a lot of it has to do with the fact...
we feel much more right to intervene on fat people, even if skinny people are doing the same exact things.
Exactly. And and in fact, we feel very little right to intervene on skinny people, even when we can clearly see that skinny people are damaging their bodies.
We still say, you look good, girl.
Yeah, in ways that like, it's really, it's like for me in my life, I feel like I tend to be very much more easily disturbed by a really, really skinny body than by a fat body. And yet I know that I, like many people, have been really taught to sublimate the response of that person's body is concerning to me, or I find it disturbing that their body looks like that, you know? So I think that that's a whole question, but I think that one of the things for me around the intervention on fat people that I find particularly offensive but is to me, again, deeply related to systemic oppression, is that so much of why and how people intervene on fat people is rooted in an assumption of their laziness and rooted in an assumption of their stupidity. And the connection between fatness, laziness, and stupidity is both like a very classist and racialized stereotype around the idea that like, if only you knew this, or if only someone had said something to you, or if only you were trying harder, if only you were doing more, then like you wouldn't look like this is... And for me, particularly as someone who's parenting 3 children and working full time, and it's just like the idea that the issue is my activity level, or that I'm like lazy in some way, or that I'm not trying hard enough, is so problematically offensive to me.
No, that's really big.
And again, like rooted not in like, you know, and again, it's one of those things where it's like, there's a huge access issues to that, right? Where it's like, not everyone has a life that's set up in a way that enables them to, you know, work out every day. Like for me, it really took me until the fall of last year to get to a point where I could fit into my life a 15-minute workout every day, followed by a shower. And that was like, I remember the incredible victory that I experienced that was as much related to the fact that I started showering every day as it was to the fact that I started working out every day. I had spent that was, you know, I had been a parent at that point for 8 years, and I had not been in a practice of showering every day. I was like showering probably on average every 3 days, because like that's how my life is set up. Like it's very hard for me to take time to do things that to me feel indulgent, and like that is its own problematic thinking, right? But like that's, you know, so to me there's just this huge
pull the thread, honey.
I know, pull the thread, right? So it's like there's a huge access issue there that people aren't paying attention to. That's like, you know, for some of us, like our lives are set up in such a way that because we are responsible for so much, like having to carve out
future of the world,
like raising the future of the world, and also like paying all of the bills for our household and everything else is like, you know, the idea that I would then also have time to both like go for a walk and take a shower and like go for a swim, you know, like, and a big part of why that has shifted in my life. I mean, there's several things that really have like clicked into place. One of them has to do with like coming into a truly co-parenting relationship with my partner. And that's been amazing for both of us. And part of it has also been that like none of my kids are toddlers now. And that just changes everything. You know what I mean? Like the fact that all three of my living children are now school aged changed everything in terms of what felt possible for me. But so, you know, that's my own personal journey. But I really do think that like, when you think about the level of economic access that you need to have in order to be able to work out on a regular basis, like the time and the money that you need in a society that is not set up in a way that like encourages people to be outside or makes space for people to be outside actively. You know what I mean? Like everything in our society is gamed against people doing things with their bodies. And yet we're punished and made to feel lazy for not figuring out ways to do things with our bodies. And like, I have more access than a lot of people. Like I live out in the woods, you know what I mean? Where I at least have a lot of outdoor beautiful space where I can go outside to be active. Right. But I still have to drive to get anywhere.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, and I think there's something about like also what gets condoned as activity or the like something that counts as exercise anyway. So this is also why the summer to me is so delicious, because like in the summer it's like, oh, I just want to go outside. Oh, I'm going to do some yoga. Now it's time to go jump in the lake. Now it's time to go garden. Now it's time to go do something. You know, it's like I'm not that I garden, but you do. You know, it's like just time to do some physical thing. Like it feels like it's much more available. But I also feel like for years and years now, like I've done the same cycle of like, I joined the gym. I'm going to the gym. I don't like the gym. Now I'm not exercising, right? And instead of like, you know, like if we had a different structure of society or different things were valued, it's like, what does your body love to do? Do that. Like, that's what your body loves.
You
and
love
it's like,
to
oh, my
dance.
body loves biking and I love dancing and I love swimming. And like, I don't love them as exercise. I just love them because they're freaking awesome. And it's like flying and moving around and it's sensual and it just like suits me. And the idea of like, and it's never sat well with me, but the idea of like, I'm going to go put myself in a building that is unnatural and do this very cool physical thing, but do it in a unnatural way. You know what I mean? So like, if, you know, like I'm going to go run on a machine, you know, just whatever. There's these different things where I'm like, I get it if it's like winter in Minnesota, but otherwise it's like, there's this gorgeous world out there. And like, why don't we engage in activities in ways that make us be a part of that world?
Yeah.
And I feel like whenever I'm doing that, my body just naturally, like there's so much more joy in it. And like the more joy I feel in the body, the more health gets generated in my body.
Yes.
Right? It's like, oh, I want to feel good. I want to feel healthy. You know, when I'm around the kids, I'm like, I'm playing badminton and like running around playing soccer and all this stuff because like it's fun to do with them. So I think so much of it is like what gets counted and what qualifies as like the impetus for physical activity. And like letting go, like so much unlearning and letting go of like what other people tell you is, you know, qualifiable physical activity. And then being like, you know, I'm into the trends, right? I'm like, oh, what's the new cleanse? What's the new detox? What's the new high intensity thing? Like, I love all those things. And hopefully I will still love them, even though they never land as something that I want to do all the time. So I always approach them periodically, like, oh, now I'm into this thing. And I'm not going to get over attached and like, I am now a Pilates person. You know, it's just like right now, this is the thing that suits me. And it might be something else, you know, in a little while. And there's certain things I keep coming back to. And now I'm hoping that booty shorts is something that I keep returning to. And like, you know, wearing crop tops with like having a belly that kind of spills over and is soft. That feels, you know, radical. And the thing that's been super exciting is like, I'm feeling all wild, radical, crazy for doing this stuff. And now I'm finding like this amazing community of other people online who are like claiming our full bodies and claiming the sensuality of it. You know, it's like there's the body positive movement and there's like, folks who are just like, let's tear down the walls of what is considered fatness. My friend Shira Hassan, for me personally, has done incredible work around this of
Yes.
helping me notice like you're being negative towards your body right now and why. And the relationship between fatness and ableism, and like the ways that ableism infuses the conversation around fatness so much.
It's so real.
It's so intense. And then like Lindy West has done incredible writing. I mean, like this is just a really great time to be fat and alive, because it feels like these boundaries are getting pushed for actually getting to feel good in the body that you have and approach health from the body that you have. And be more honest. And the Roxanne book, to me, part of what I love about it is she doesn't let anyone off the hook of how hard it can be also to struggle with fatness. And like she makes the distinction between what I would call like my fatness, where I'm fat and I can still shop at like Lane Bryant or Torrid, and I can fit into stuff that I can order online. And she talks about, being twice that size and twice that weight, and like not being able to buy things that way or access things that way, and how it's like I can't rock the fashions I want to rock. I can't express myself through my clothing, and what that increase of size does for things like travel and public perception. And I think that's also key. It's like both key to be able to say, like, don't just automatically judge what's going on with my body. And also there's some really hard stuff that goes on with this body, and how, like how does each person get the sacred space to work that out themselves?
Yes. And like, how does it become like a path that's about like being liberated from pain? Because for me, like one of the things that I often experience is that people will tell me like, wow, you look really good right now. And the thing that they're responding to, I know, like they think that they're complimenting me for they think I've lost weight, and that's what they're complimenting me for. But the thing that I know, because I actually know how much I weigh in relationship to how much I weighed like, the month before, is that what's actually going on is because of, the particular type of like workout that I do that's really grounded in core realignment and healing of the pelvic floor, that because I'm doing that work, I'm not in pain. And that's what they're witnessing. What they think looks like weight loss is actually that I'm moving through the world and not experiencing pain as I'm moving. And that makes me feel good. And it makes me move differently. And so they're like, wow, you look so different. I'm like, yeah, it's because I'm not in pain. And so it's like,
that's so key.
It's so key to me that like how much we perceive that there's something wrong with someone's body that we assign to size is actually, we actually might be perceiving that there's something wrong, and that the thing that's wrong is that they're in pain. And we're assigning it in a way because in so many ways, emotionally and spiritually, we're really shut off from each other. We're shut off from noticing each other's energy in that way, or we're shut off from understanding that that's what we're picking up on,
Exactly. I get this all the time. I feel like people will tell me stuff like, you lost so much weight, you look so great. And like in my head, I'm like, I'm at the peak weight that I've ever been at as an adult. But I have been stretching and working out and doing my yoga. And so, I've been drinking tons of water. My joints feel well oiled. I've been moving and I'm not hurting. And I'm like going up and down these stairs and not hurting. I mean, the other day, I tore my meniscus 2 years ago in my knee. And the other day I had a moment of like, I've done my PT and I've like taken it easy, taken it slow, and let things heal. And I'm like, oh, I think I might be ready to go biking again, which has been one of the things that I was not able to do. And I'm like, oh, that's so exciting. How do I know that that's possible in my body? And it's like, oh, because of the way I've been doing stairs. Yeah. And like realizing that I still take the stairs one at a time a lot of times. And it's just it's just like pattern because I've been doing that for a couple of years. So I'm just like, ooh. And I had to tell myself, like, you're okay. You're not going to fall down. You can take the stairs. Like, you can walk just straight up and down the stairs. And if you need to adjust again, you will adjust again. Like I'm building this like trusting relationship with my body that like ability comes and goes. And sometimes it comes and goes because of size. And sometimes it comes and goes because of other things. And like, I can keep shifting with, the abilities as they shift in my body. And if I listen, then I don't have to increase the harm. Every time I get injured is because I'm not listening. And so then I increase the harm because my body's like, hey, we got to get your attention.
Yep.
And make sure you slow down. Thank you for listening. If you like what you're hearing, let us know. There's so many ways to support us. You can comment or repost the podcast.
We're on Twitter and Instagram at End of the World PC. We're also on Facebook at End of the World Show. You can also make a sustaining donation through Patreon by visiting our page, patreon.com/endoftheworldshow. How to Survive the End of the World is produced and edited by our beloved Zach Rosen. Music for today's show comes to us from Blue Dot Sessions and Tunde Olaniran. The song you're hearing now is called Symbol, and it was actually co-written by Tunde with Adrienne Marie Brown. My body is a symbol. You can find Tunde's music on Bandcamp, Spotify, Apple, iTunes, or Amazon. Thanks for listening.
Fantasy. Can we live forever? Make water in the desert. Our love we can rekindle. My body is a symbol. My body is a symbol. In my mind, in my heart, I believe that everything I am and everything that I'll be. In my mind, in my heart, I believe that. In my mind, in my heart, I believe that everything I am and everything that I'll be. In my mind, in my heart. Can we live forever?